عملو خونگش قانه موقع بنا ایوان Carmen Morad. قبولم شنقاتوخون أرخوزت modern Assyrian al AGN. وديو همزم تيبتويا من Donna Linder قد إلى Stanislaus County voter registrar من clerk-recorder. Donna إلى دبرانتت elections office at Stanislaus County. أخكماجة خرز بريشة مديح قاتوخون جدنا خرز بريشة كو دانت قانون شخلوبله جولا أخشي Stanislaus County إنا جو كل state of California أخبدايتون قانون elections بياشنا شخلبه سبب كوفيد إلى كل ballots برشنا جو بتفاتت ناشي Assembly Bill تلاي شوا إذا قانون جو state of California كده قولنية أخنا بخايف بشتلان درتا قد كل ballots برشنا جو بتفاتت ناشي من شيتة إسري قد اتفعلن presidential election ان تخريتون جخوز بريشة ميقمت آنوياتي قدنه شخلابت قانونه همزمتي أوديو من دانا ليندر بتويا قد داخي من عادية حاضر وايخ عادية قد إيوخجو يرخ جانيوري شيتة إسري تري داخي حاضر وايخ June 7th قد إنا primary elections قد دا شيتة إسري تري جدا همزمتا بشاميتون باز workshops جو Stanislaus County أخنا اتلن اتشام دياتي خامنة البت إلى ترلاك ديتا ترلاك شباب شو تابوتت آستراي ترلاك إلى جو ترلاك أخنا إيبا خا community center اتلن خا يول تشغل ترابا خلنتا خا partnership من elections office أخشميتون كماجا نسبة الدا يول تشغلتا نسبة بن أمتن قد ادمجت شريكنا بعلى مسلمنا ريجستر فيدنا اتلي رابا إقارة كود خاطرايا قد شريكنا جدنا برشياتي قد مدوينا elections office قد أخنا آترايا اتلن خقالة خلانا جدا قولونية بريشايد ديتا ترلاك or Stanislaus County همزمت قد بشاميتون لعدية من ميقورتا دانا ليندر إلى باس ترمديان الرابا أنقاية خامنة إلى قد شاريتا من ترلاك و مديات بريشخينة بتعملون workshops أنا نقيتها قد بنأمتن انبويتون بجرابا بازنة شخلافة قانون يطيتون بس معلوخون أفلاير قد بخزيتون نجم ديات بريشة كمسيتون بارسوبايد شركيتون يا إن لبويتون عزيتون جانوخون تاما كمسيتون زوم لينك شقليتون له وشركيتون وبقارة قد تتلوخون بقريتون له وجوابوخون تاتي من دانا جانو إن مدري مس أوديتون لأنا workshops تلفون بدمتاخ أو لينك at email address at elections office قد ماسيتون قاريتون له بقاروخون بقريتون له هريدانا عادية Office of Elections جو Stanislaus County hire vadela پرسوپ قد بليشان بريش كمزمي بريشايد ليشان عطرايا عرابا مغديان تلا سبب part-time seasonal شولة قد إله apply دوديتون online link بدمقزي أخلاقاتوخون إن ماديتون قد كمزميتون لشان عطرايا training قاتوخون بيشا مقرفتا پاریلوخون بیزویزن بایتون part-time اویتون کود شیتا قد اویلون سنیقویتا الپرسوپت اینا part-time trained قاریلوخون ایلا خامن دیرا بشابیرا قد انا بخشاون منتين تلا قابن امتدين عديا بتشادن قاتوخون شميتون لا همزمتي من بيقورتا دانا ليندر باسيم رابا
We have a federal government which is based in Washington, D.C. and has jurisdiction over the entire country. We have state governments, which of course there are 50 states in the U.S. And then we have local governments as well, municipal governments and other things that also occur at a very kind of localized level. The Constitution in the United States is the most significant document there is. It outlines the roles and responsibilities of the three branches of the federal government and also determines to a large extent what laws can be passed. The federal government has three different branches. The legislative branch, which is primarily involved in making laws, the judicial branch, which is primarily involved in interpreting laws, and the executive branch, which is primarily involved in enforcing laws. Congress is comprised of two different houses, the Senate as well as the House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives and the Senate essentially have to come together to pass legislation. The executive, of course, has the really important task of actually implementing the laws. And so it's ultimately the responsibility of the executive branch, which is not just the president, but also federal agencies and departments under the president's jurisdiction that have real authority for actually enforcing how these laws turn out. On the foreign policy side, however, the president has much more latitude to take actions, even in some cases absent the support of Congress. So for a bill to become a law, it not only has to be passed by both houses of Congress, the Senate as well as the House of Representatives, but the president also has to ink his signature to that legislation. And so it's important from that standpoint that those two branches are on the same page. Otherwise, you might get what is called a veto. Who controls the Senate and who controls the House of Representatives has huge implications for the kind of legislation that the government passes and essentially what policies are made. Especially if there is divided government between the president and Congress, that can really stymie legislation, create policy paralysis. By some measures, polarization right now is as high as it's been since the Civil War. Sometimes those laws become especially controversial. When that happens, it's up to the judiciary, and in many cases the Supreme Court, to actually make decisions about what is constitutional and what is not. And in fact, we do see significant controversies even within the Supreme Court about whether the justices think that a piece of legislation is constitutional or not.
Welcome to the Modern Assyrian on AGN SAD. This is Carmen Morad. My special guest today is Stanislaus County Voter Registrar and County Court Recorder, Ms. Donna Linder. Welcome to the program, Donna.
Thank you for having me, Carmen.
It's always a pleasure to have you on. This is not your first time. I do want you to know that we so appreciate your time, and we know how busy you are. There is always an election coming up, and your office is always on top of it to make sure that you meet all the community outreach activities that you have set out to meet the need to inform and educate our voters in Stanislaus County. So thank you for making time for us.
Thank you for having me. We appreciate your station and all that you do to help us get our information out to the public and just do more education.
Thank you, Donna. You know, this platform that we have in the Assyrian community, and I would really like to thank AGN and our staff for always making time to make sure that these interviews are conducted where we are able to reach as many people. Whether it's in Stanislaus County, as you know, our platform is not only countywide and statewide, but it's national. So the more information and education, it makes a difference so that the questions that people have are answered, Donna. Um, as I said, mentioned earlier, there's always an election coming up. The next one is the June 7th, 2022 primary elections, correct?
It is statewide primary. So with redistricting, Stanislaus County will have new things to vote on. We have more congressional districts. We have just one Senate district. It's changed one of our assembly districts. So it's changing up kind of what things you may see on your ballot.
Donna, you served on the steering committee of the Stanislaus County Redistricting Commission. I had the privilege of also being a representative from the community. There are changes that have occurred. It is so important for voters to really check the status of their voter registration, of how these new changes in the law affect the way we vote, and to really answer their questions, because obviously there are more questions than there were before. Can you please expand on these election workshops that you have calculated for our county and are going to facilitate beginning with tonight in Turlock? Can you please tell us more about what our viewers and voters have to look forward to at these workshops?
So, in Stanislaus County, we wanted to get out to our public and do some education. There was a new law, Assembly Bill 37, which makes California all vote by mail. So, in essence, we'll continue to vote as we did for the 2020 presidential and the uh, governor recall. So, at these workshops, though, we want to educate our public on many things about our office. For instance, what we do on a day-to-day basis, how to register to vote, who can register, where can you register, how to cast your ballot, from things like if it says vote for one and you vote for two, that could nullify your vote. We want to inform our public of these things. Some of the current laws and how they're affecting what we do. What's the future of elections in Stanislaus County? What do you expect to see? And then again, we're mailing everyone a ballot. A lot of people are voting by mail. So what happens to that once you put it in that drop box or it gets to our office? We're going to take you through how we process that ballot and what is done with it for your security and to make sure that your vote is protected. And then we talk about Canvas. What does that mean? Why is it 30 days? What are we doing during that time frame? And then all the security that we have put into our elections here in Stanislaus County, some things over and above what the law requires. And then we also, of course, always ask that opportunity to be involved. We have openings for part-time positions and still our volunteers also.
Donna, you touched base on some of the most important things and important questions that people have asked. I've had the privilege of working at the voting centers, and people want to know why a certain change is made. Unfortunately, it is at a time when they come in contact with their ballot. As you said, AB 37 mandates that everyone receives a ballot at their home. That's why it's important to make sure their status and their mailing address is updated. If they've changed their name, if they have changed their political affiliation, and it's so important to know what's going on beforehand. So I highly recommend to our viewers to participate in these workshops. Donna, I know we will show the flyer of all the locations that these workshops will take place at. However, due to COVID and due to the surge that we are experiencing in our county, and I'm sure all over, is there any way these workshops can be watched later, or these tutorials, are they online? How can viewers who are not able to attend in person know more about these workshops?
So they can contact our office or go to our website. We are also able to provide a Zoom link to any of the workshops. We are having them in all 9 of our cities, various days. They all start at 6 o'clock, and we will continue the workshop till we've answered every question that a voter may have. And they can join any Zoom link on any of these workshops that they wish. So if you can't make it for some reason, just contact us, and whatever day works for you, we'll send you the Zoom link, and you can watch the workshop on Zoom and ask your questions that way also.
And also, Donna, if anyone isn't able to participate for any reason, it's hard to imagine during these times no one can participate via Zoom. But let's say if someone can call in, they can ask a question. And of course, a member of your staff, they go above and beyond to answer any questions. They can also do that. We will provide that phone number the link to your office, and of course, the location of all the workshops throughout the county. What has been the most challenging thing during the last, I want to say, this is the third year we're entering our COVID situation. How
Mhm.
does that affect your office and how you are doing these community outreaches, Donna?
COVID, lack of people having the ability to work. We are always looking for more staffing. It seems like we mail everyone a ballot, but in reality, we still have locations and they're open for more days. So you have some for 11 days, for 4 days. So we really need those part time employees that we train extensively on how to look up your registration, print a ballot, things like that, to be able to work at our centers. Um, it also has affected because it's change. Voters get nervous about change, and that's why
Mhm.
we want to do these educations to educate them on the care that we take in processing that vote by mail ballot and the security that we are putting into these elections.
Very important, Donna, with everything that we hear and we see. And the only way to challenge those doubts is really to know how the system works. And these workshops truly provide that knowledge, that transparency, as we call it, into how the system works. So kudos for that. I also want to ask you about something that you have asked me and other members of the Assyrian community to be involved in, which is the Language Assistant Advisory Committee. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how that came to be, and what the objective of forming this commission is, Donna?
So, the Language Assistant Advisory Committee is to assist our department in what is a need for some of our languages. We want input from our public and our citizens that are in those communities of language that we are required to provide information for. And having that assistance helps us to know how to reach out, what kind of materials work best, what news stations or newspapers or ways of contacting those communities will help us in the best way to get information to our voters, to provide ballots or just education for them so that they understand what their options are.
Mhm.
So this advisory committee gives us that opportunity. We've also learned a lot from them. What areas of the community need to hear from us more? What types of information are better in those areas? And then we look to them for assistance, to have people that can translate out our vote centers and for locations to go out and do these educational things. We look to those advisory committees for that also.
I have found it to be an eye opener because as you know, the Assyrian American Civic Club of Turlock is also a community center. It serves the community at large. However, we know that as the population grows, as the demographic changes, um, to have ballots that are in different languages, Donna, it is such a defining moment in each community. A community feels valued and welcome and acknowledged when we see this support from you and your office. For the Assyrian community to be able to be recruited to speak the language or to be able to assist others that might need it at our voting centers. This is huge, and I want to commend you for that because that is one way we motivate people to get involved, to register, to know about the process, to know where they go to ask questions. So, thank you for giving us that opportunity. And I want you to know that we at the Civic Club take it very seriously.
And we appreciate so much all your involvement because we feel that we have a better connection with that community through the Assyrian Civic Club and their desire to assist us.
It is our pleasure. As you know, this is an organization that's been around since 1946, and it is part of our bylaws to help the best interest of the city of Turlock, our county. And as you know, more than anyone, change is hard for people to accept if you're used to doing something a certain way. Now, with the ballots coming to our homes, but the fact that the voting centers are different than polling stations, the fact that we living in the same residence now might have different representation, which through the redistricting it changes, through different candidates and different people retiring or terming out. That's why we will be talking more about the ballots that will be sent out prior, and I do believe it is 29 days prior to the election coming up in June. So I invite you to come back, Donna, and let us know how we can use this platform that we have in our community through our radio, television, social media to inform and educate and keep everyone updated as we are getting closer and closer to our election day.
I would love to. We mail ballots on May 9th. So anytime before that, it would be wonderful to come back and do more education and just give people information about the upcoming election as it gets closer, and some things to look for and some ways that they can be assisted through the services that we'll provide.
Thank you. Donna, in closing, I would like to ask you this. Since we spoke last time, which was the governor's recall in California, and before that, it was the presidential election in 2020, how fast time flies. What are the major changes since we went through this conversation? Since AB 37 is being implemented, which is everyone in California, every active voter in California will receive a ballot. Other than that, what other major changes are there that a voter can or may experience?
So, our turnout for the governor recall was not very large. So, many of our voters will see changes that we may have implemented during that time. So, with every voter receiving a ballot 29 days prior to the election that's already registered, as they continue to register up until 15 days before, we send out ballots to them within 5 days. So, ballots are continuing to go out. Voters will also see at our vote centers, and a vote center can be likened to 4 polling locations put into one spot, but you could go anywhere in the county. They provide the services that a polling location would, but also services that you could receive from my office. So it's like little mini satellite offices all over the county. And you can go in and update your registration. You can receive another ballot. But we also have scanners at those vote centers. So if you have chosen that you don't want to mail in your ballot, or you don't want to drop it off and wait for us to count it, you can always vote right then and there and put it through a scanner. And then those results are brought to us on election night and uploaded. Now, we'll have many locations open 10 days prior to Election Day, and then the rest are all open the 4 days prior to Election Day, so over that weekend. And we are mandated to have a total of 28 locations, but our goal will be to have 30 to best suit our citizens. So we went from 143 polls. We think 30 is a good number to just combine all those polls into those locations.
That's very impressive, Donna. I mean, there's always growth, there's always more opportunities for every voter. Let's say you live in Turlock, but you work in, let's say, Modesto, or
Mhm.
you work in Patterson. You don't have to go back to a voting center where you live, even though all you have to do is check in with the system and you can make all the changes and you can vote in a place other than you've usually done, which was your own district, correct?
Correct. And the nice thing about that is people were always concerned if they ended up at the wrong location by accident that they had to vote provisionally. And by having this type of system, the way that we've set it up, you can go to any location. They'll look up your registration and say,
Mhm.
"Oh, I see that you have not already voted," and you can vote your proper ballot for your area. So it eliminates probably 98% of our provisional voters. There's still sometimes certain things that will cause that, but most people will get to just vote their regular ballot for their district from anywhere in Stanislaus County.
Mhm.
Any of
Okay.
our vote centers can do that.
And voting provisionally is so time consuming for those of us who have done it and worked it. And these are very good things to know because people are concerned. I don't want to wait in line. I don't want to wait more than I have to. I'm on my lunch break or I'm coming in after work. It's important to know these improvements that have been made, Donna, that people know that they can do this expeditely, they can do it effectively, and it saves time and how efficient it is because, like you said, there are little satellite offices all over the county. In closing, Donna, is there anything you would like to reiterate regarding the workshops, the locations, and how people can reach your office if they have a question that they're not getting answered by going online?
So we're happy to answer any questions over the phone. I personally will talk to any voter who requests that. You can call us at our phone number of 209-525-5201. You can go to our website that answers a lot of people's questions. Request the link to come to one of our workshops. If you cannot make the workshop in your area, you are welcome to come to any workshop at any city. And once our election gets up and running and we've mailed out our ballots, there will be drop boxes that are our official county drop boxes at many locations that are convenient for voters to drop off their ballot. Those ballots are picked up by our staff. And so you eliminate any middleman. No other people are touching your ballots, not even our staff. They just lock them up and bring them straight to the office. So your ballot is not handled, it's here to be processed. And then our vote centers, we will have vote centers throughout the county open those 10 days before. And we really encourage our voters to vote in advance, go on Saturdays, skip any lines that may be out there. And then that way you can get more of that personal service at your vote center.
Thank you, Donna. Perfectly put. And let's not forget that there will be language assistance at certain areas that the demographic requires it. But we at the Syrian American Civic Club, through our radio and our organization and our platform, are always able to help. And not just the Assyrian community, but any member of the community that needs that information that needs to be connected to you and your office.
One thing that we do in Stanislaus County, you did mention that it's in certain areas. We do take our facsimile ballots and
Mhm.
we multiply them for every vote center. My thought is if I'm going to tell our citizens that you can go to any vote center, then there should be assistance at those vote centers. So we do our best to hire more of our language speaking assistants as possible to have them throughout the county, not just where we're mandated, to better assist our voters. So if you are from Turlock and you need that assistance, our goal is to have it everywhere. We can't always find enough translators, but we are working hard to do that for you.
Perfect. Donna, one last question in closing. Is the recruitment for hiring part-time employees still open? And if it is, how can people apply for those positions?
They can go to stanjobs, STANJOBS.org, and they apply for the election clerk. It's a part-time seasonal position that is open right now. We are getting ready to start doing interviews. It will be a continuous recruitment. We would really like to hire 150 people for this June election, and we'd like to get started hiring them because the training is quite extensive. We will be bringing them in part-time off and on to get practice in the voter registration system of looking things things up and just working in that system. So they'll be doing some processing of items as we work them through training.
I highly recommend our viewers who are Assyrian speaking and are looking for a part-time seasonal job to apply. I can tell you it's a pleasure to work with you and your staff, and it is an ongoing education and to be informed and being a part of something so important in our democracy is really commendable. So I'm hoping more and more people who are eligible and who can do this and really apply online and go through this training and really give back to our community by being a part of this process. Thank you so much, Donna, for joining me today. And I'm hoping we can share more of this important work that has to do. We talk about every election being an important one, and this one is really, truly important because of the redistricting. A
Yes.
lot of changes have happened. Some cities and county and assembly lines have shifted. So I'm hoping our active voters will become more involved to find out who they will be voting for as well. Thank you again, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Carmen, and helping us to get this important information out to our public.
It is my pleasure, and I invite you to come back as you see fit to share more information. This concludes my conversation with Stanislaus County Voter Registrar and Clerk Recorder, Ms. Donna Linder. This is Carmen Morad. I will see you on the next Modern Assyrian on AGN.